Good evening and welcome to tonight's community meeting, August 2nd, for the West Lolo Complex. The last fire in this complex is the Thorn Creek Fire, which you have all come to find information. So welcome. Thank you for allowing our team to be a part of your community during this short time. This meeting is being recorded, so thank you for being patient as we started the cameras as I came forward this evening. It will be posted to the West Lolo Complex Facebook page and also the West Lolo Complex YouTube site. We ask now that you silence your cell phones and please hold your questions to the end. I will do a short introduction of our speakers this evening. My name is Jeanette Smith, Public Information Officer for Northern Rockies Team 1. We have Dave Robleski, Plains, Thompson Falls District Ranger. We will have Sheriff Tom Rummel, Mayor Mark Sheets. If the Air Resource Advisor comes and is available, that individual is David Finnan. We have Bob Honish, who will talk to you about weather, Brian Anderson, who will talk to you about fire behavior, and Scott Schrank, who will talk to you about operations on the fire. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dave Robleski.
So as Jeanette said, I'm Dave Robleski. I'm the new district ranger at the Plains Thompson Falls Ranger District. Been there about 3 months now and in that job, but have worked there since the year 2001. So thank you all for coming out this evening. Thank you all for your support of our firefighters and for the donations to the firefighters. That's much appreciated. Thinking about the Thorn Creek fire, it was one of 35 fires that resulted from the lightning storm on July 7th. The Thorn and, we actually had to suppress those 35 fires. We set priorities. We successfully suppressed 33 out of those 35 fires. The remaining two, the Thorn and the Winnemuck fire, burned together, and they're now the Thorn Creek fire. And they, because of the location and the fire size, the rough country, heavy fuels and poor access, and also lack of firefighting resources, these all contributed to a very low chance of success for us to just go up on the hill, dig a line around it, and put it out. So we had to sort of take a step back and reevaluate. And what we're doing is we've got some priorities set for the fire. Those priorities are safety, firefighter safety, public safety, structures, property, infrastructure, and natural and cultural resources. And so the decisions that we make on an everyday basis, the incident management team, those are all based on those priorities in that order. And so before I step off here, I did want to remind everybody that this stuff is all connected. I mean, I could be talking to some of you in November or February at a public meeting about a Forest Service project. And so fire severity, resistance to fire control, the resources we need to suppress a fire, fuel conditions, fuel treatments, prescribed burning, timber harvest. This is all linked together. It's all one story. So please remember that, even though we're talking about a very specific emergency issue this evening. So the control lines that we have on this fire along the base of the valley, that control line can be more successful because of the work that the Ranger District has done in the past with cooperation from many of you, and the work that many of you have done along your private lands in that area. That makes things much easier for our firefighters. It makes it a lot easier for them to work and succeed in a safe manner. So thank you for all of you who have done fuel treatment work. Lastly, the incident management team we have working here, these are fantastic people who know what they're doing. We have a lot of local firefighters working, local leadership, people with a lot of experience in fire management in these very hills around us. They know what they're doing, and they're doing the best they can for us. And so again, thank you, and they'll give you a lot more information than I can.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have a lot for you tonight. I can tell you that we will be losing our out-of-county deputies. For those of you that didn't know it, we had 5 Gallatin County deputies, I believe 3 from Flathead and 2 from Ravalli. They have helped us with our roadblocks and some of our roving patrols. Those guys will be called back to their home counties to resume their duties there. However, we will continue with our deputies in our roving patrols and our night shifts as well. So those of you that have left your homes, they will not be left unguarded. We do have the National Guard coming in. I'm not sure exactly when they will be here, but when they do get here, we'll see how we can incorporate them into some of our security. Again, the National Guard is here to help. They're not here to scoop anybody up and haul them away. They're just simply here to help the Forest Service a lot with logistics and their supply end of it. And if they can be fitted into law enforcement to help us, not to act as law enforcement, but to simply help us with any roadblocks that we may need to do. As the Forest Service backs this fire down, as the team backs it down to this cat line across here from the west back to the east, one of the things that we'll be looking at doing is getting people back into their homes and going from an evac status to a pre-evac status on those places. So this is going to be kind of a shuffle, so to speak, as they continue to make it black going back east and they get it safe. We will continue to move people back in and relax restrictions along those lines. At that point, I really don't have anything else.
I'm Mark Sheets, Mayor of Thompson Falls, and here to talk to you about the city water system. At this time, the wells are working fine. We had the one pump on the large well replaced. The spring is still flowing, but with it, through the years, has been decreasing steadily. On it, we are on a storage exemption from DEQ and are trying to rectify that situation, but it's been something that's been happening for over 20 years. On here, there is plenty of water there, but because of the increase in people in town, the hot weather and everything, the usage has gone up tremendously and has stressed our storage capabilities. On Friday night, also on Saturday, people left their sprinklers going around their house all night long. Unacceptable. It's past our water restriction regulations. The tanks got down dangerously low. If somebody's house caught on fire, we would be unable to respond to that, and that's why we need to keep those tanks as full as possible. On here, we've changed the water restrictions, starting to be in the paper on Wednesday, but it'll be, again, even number houses on even days, odd number houses on odd days. When you're able to water is from 5 in the morning till 9 in the morning, and then from 8 at night till midnight. So we've reduced that hours onto there, hoping to maintain the levels in the tanks, also to protect our pump. If our pump goes out again, like it did right before the 4th of July, we'd be really hurting. We're trying to maintain enough water in here again for you to be able to flush your toilets, to be able to carry on normal showers and daily activities, and yet try to keep your gardens and your lawns alive a bit. If further actions happen in which people do not obey these, then we may come down to having to do a total restriction of any lawn watering onto here, just to be able to maintain those levels, especially for the safety of the citizens of town. Thank you.
Hey, good evening. My name's Bob Honish. I'm the incident meteorologist assigned to this team. I normally work out of the Weather Service office in Great Falls, Montana, and I work on assignments with different fire teams for the larger fire incidents. And just kind of looking at the weather here over the last period, I don't need to tell you guys how hot it's been through July. In fact, I saw Missoula and Kalispell had their second hottest July on record. In Missoula, those records go back to 1893, so a good historical look at how hot it's been. And that stretch of heat kind of culminated here on Saturday when we had our temperatures into the low 100s. Even I think I saw 106 at the airport here in Thompson Falls. So very hot, very dry conditions up through Saturday, and then we had an unusually deep amount of moisture come into the area beginning Saturday night. That plume of moisture came up from the southwest US where they have a monsoon, and they get that kind of thunderstorm activity and humidity. And it is kind of unusual to get that good of a shot of moisture up here, but it came in Saturday night. We had the thunderstorm activity last night. Some places to our south got almost excessive amounts of precipitation with that storm. We got about 1/4 to 1/3 of an inch at the sites that we have reporting from around the fire. There was some higher amounts to our south. The storms that came up were really strong and it did have a lot of lightning. But those cells did kind of lose some of their strength as they came over this last bit of terrain here and across the Clark Fork. So I didn't see much lightning north of the river. But we did get a good period of moisture, some good showers, and what we would consider a wetting rain, enough that it has an influence on the humidity and it has an influence on things. So a good amount of moisture, even though it wasn't as much as places to our south. That really moist air mass kind of is still hanging in here today. The humidity is unusually high for this area this time of year. But the main lifting part of that moisture that produces the storms has kind of moved off to the east. So there's a few isolated cells still mostly off to our east, but we're kind of on the tail end of that moisture here. It does move out tonight, and the next few days we're looking at some drier weather and warmer weather moving back in. Not as hot as last week, but it does warm up pretty quickly. We'll be back in the 90s at these low elevations tomorrow and Wednesday, 80s and 70s at the very highest elevations, but it will dry out. Tomorrow we'll still have some of this residual humidity left, but Wednesday is a fairly dry day again. Looking further ahead, as we get into Thursday and beyond, we do have kind of a changing weather pattern than we've seen for the last month. We had this shot of moisture come through, and then we've got a trough of low pressure that's been kind of sitting off the coast of the Pacific, and it slowly works its way in. The first piece comes in on Thursday, and then it looks like there's some additional pieces that come in behind it on Friday and Saturday. So we'll have a chance for some wetting rains again. There will be a thunderstorm chance as well, looking ahead at Thursday and Friday. But the bright side is we will have that increase in humidity, the increase in cloud cover, and those chances for some wetting rains at times going into the weekend. So that's kind of the general overview of the weather forecast for the next week, and I will pass it on to our fire behavior analyst.
Good evening, my name is Brian Anderson. I'm a fire behavior analyst. My job here is to try to take what we've heard about the weather and then look at the fuels and look at the topography and kind of piece it all together and try to come up with how is this fire going to behave. And when we look at this, I think it's handy to kind of take a look at the bigger picture of where we are. So this is an ERC, or energy release component, which is basically a measure of how much heat per unit we have out there. And it's for the general area of around Thompson Falls here. And we take the local weather data from a fixed weather station, and that's what we use to complete this analysis. So kind of going through some of the basics right here, you can see the years that we use are from 2002 until 2020, and from April 1st all the way through November 1st. And so the way that we read this is this red line right here. From that time period, that is the maximum values that have been recorded from 2002 to 2020. This gray line right here, that is the average value during that same kind of time frame. And for reference, we can take a look at a couple of different years. So first of all, this blue dotted line, that's from 2016, and the green dotted line is from 2017. So we can kind of use those for references. When we look at that, one of the big things one of the questions that people will always want to ask us is, when will it end? Kind of as a default, and this doesn't hold true every time, but kind of as a default, what we like to use is this 60% line. When that goes down below 60% and never comes back up, that's what we call a season-ending event. If it goes down, but then comes back up and never goes below that 60%, we call that a season-slowing event. So moisture has different effects depending on what time of year you're really looking at. And a couple of examples, I'll try not to get too much in the way here. If we look at some moisture that, so here's our ERCs, the energy release component. And in 2016, we can see it had a pretty good drop and went right to that 60th percentile line, right? And then it went right back up. It didn't really have much effect. And that's because it was right about this August time frame. When we look at that again in 2017, we can see that we had still a big effect right here, but it never was able to recover because that moisture came right in the September time frame. So that's kind of how that works, just in a nutshell. And you may hear of a couple of things when we talk about moisture, because that's the big thing right now is we've got that rain, that moisture was out there. There's a thing that we refer to as a 1,000-hour fuel. A 1,000-hour fuel is greater than 3 inches. And the reason it's called 1,000 hours is because it takes 1,000 hours under lab conditions to lose 66% of that moisture. What that equates to, it takes about a month to change. The moisture that we got here less than 48 hours ago isn't going to affect those largest fuels. The way that that works is as it falls onto the outside, that outside is going to be wet. That core is still as dry as when we started the season. So if there's enough heat, it will burn through that outside and it will be into very dry fuels again. Now, when we talk about the really fine fuels, which is what we refer to grass, well, there's not much surface area inside. So if the outside gets wet, well, it can react pretty quick. And where the large diameter fuels were called 1,000-hour, grass is referred to as a 1 hour. So that fuel moisture can change in it 1 hour later. So what is the advantage of the moisture that we got right now? Well, it did penetrate the soil pretty good, which is what we use to kind of mop up. But we also know that it's only for a limited time. So right now, it could be great to mop up, but that moisture is going to disappear again unless we see more and more stacked on it. So we've seen in the Northern Rockies, just as a rule of thumb, this doesn't happen every time, but just as a rule of thumb, that moisture that we got, we know may last about 2 to 3 days, maybe 4 days. It all kind of depends on what the weather is that comes after that. And I kind of wanted to relay a crazy story because this year is nothing like we've seen. We're not used to this. This is not an average type of year. I'm from a forest that's just to the south of here. And we found a fire about 2 weeks ago that has been from a pile that was lit in November. We don't see that. This is not an ordinary year. So you may ask, all right, fire behavior wise, you just got a bunch of moisture. What can we expect? We don't see much out there. That must mean that it's just gone, right? Well, no. Fire has a tendency to want to hide. And right now, where it's hiding is in those large logs, right? The cores that are going to be nice and dry. It's going to be hiding underneath the duff, that kind of litter layer that's on the ground. And sometimes you won't even be able to see any burned material on the top of that. It's going to be underneath it, and you have to put your fingers all the way underneath there. And the third place is if you have a heavy canopy, that can intercept that rain, and all of those fuels underneath that, there's no rain that made it to it. Even though we did have some pretty good rains out here, there still can be dry areas underneath some of those tight canopies. So over the next couple of days, what can you expect? You heard it from the weather guy. It's going to dry out. That fire didn't go anywhere. It's just not, you're just not able to see it right now. So over the next couple of days, as we see things dry out, it will reemerge and you will see smoke again. Thanks.
Okay, good evening, Scott Schrank, I'm Operations Section Chief. I'll run through update from the last few days since the last public meeting. So starting up in Division Charlie, above Graves Creek on that Cougar Ridge, that's Dan Helterline's division. Really a lot of activity in there the last few days. Definitely kind of a troublesome corner for us, if you know Graves Creek and all the cliffy ledges up there, and that's why, you know, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you probably saw a lot of the lats, you know, the large tankers, the seats, rotor wing working. Really the goal there was to try to go direct as possible with hand crews and then stab that thing into that rocky ledge. And takes a lot of aircraft support. We kept getting rollout. Definitely a little troublesome corner for us. And really, if that doesn't work, you know, the fallback is we have to take hand crews, which are in short commodity, and basically take that ridge all the way down to the gravel pit there at Graves, which would take significant time. There's been blowdown in there this spring, so really focused a lot of energy trying to tie it into that rock ledge there. And it's looking really good. You know, Saturday evening, the east wind gave them some troubles. You know, I mean, it was over 100 degrees at 9:30 at night still. But basically, they got that tied in, had a little slop the next day of about an acre, hooked that again. The moisture really helped out, you know, and really we're feeling good on Charlie right now. We have line in, got skidgeons, got the hose lay, have crews mopping up. It is tied into the rocks. Really, like Dan said the other day, is like every single piece of organic material in that rocky stuff is wanting to burn. You know, so the moisture really helps them actually catch that and corral it. You know, like we say around here, rocks burn, it seems, you know, with all the, you know, one little pine needle, one bit of lichen. So really, that was a troublesome corner. It's our heel. It's our anchor point. We're feeling good about that. We have it in there. It's kind of just in a, you know, you won't see containment on that for a few days because we just need to pound that and keep mopping it up, keep securing it. Couple days you'll probably see some more aircraft there on scene and that rocky ledgy stuff dropping, you know, because we can't get crews in that rock, so we'll continue to keep eyes on that, but we're feeling really good on Charlie. Got a good anchor point. So then coming around through Zulu, you know, basically from Grays Creek east, we've had black to the control line for several days in there, going through Thorn Creek, etc. Take Cable's division, and that is pretty much in a full-blown, you know, mop up, securing the line, everything. There's really nothing to speak of in there over the last few days. Again, the moisture will help expedite containment in that area, and that was what Tom was talking about, you know, is the re-entry and containment are kind of hand in hand. We talk each day, the sheriff's office and us in operations, and really once we feel good with that containment, we'll recommend to Tom, and it'll be his call on re-entry, but you will start to see re-entry as containment progresses west to east. And that's a daily conversation. So continuing east, you know, it was still in Zulu, going on up to the November break. You know, the last few days, most of the action was in, you know, like from the Harlow Ranch, so you take Squaw Creek to Weber. That was the next chunk that we were working on. Bringing the main fire down the hill, got it down to the line. Saturday, obviously, an active burn day when the east winds kicked up, but we'd been bringing black down, so when that kicked up, it ran literally a few hundred yards, hit our black, and then we could continue on, brought that around to Weber. So got a few spots, mainly short range stuff that evening. And again, it was an interesting evening, you know, it's 101 and it's dark out, but you know, we got around that, and night, you know, day shift worked till about midnight, transitioned with night shift, then night shift carried it through, secured yesterday, got some rain on that, so today was just full-blown mop-up with the engines and skidgeons in there, and that whole line now from Graves all the way to the ridge just to the west of Weber is looking really good. Moving into November, okay, basically Fire edge is coming down into Weber Gulch. It's pretty much on an elevational line or contour line where it's getting into a lot of those old logging and burn units that are going up Weber. So it's a little bit more of that open fuel, the higher brush and ceanothus. So the moisture will help it kind of hang in there for a few days. What that'll do is buy us time to really get a lot of this back door secured. Then we can proceed on to the east over the next few days when things dry out. So then the next bite would be going basically from Weber. Then we got to do the jump up over the ridge. Then we drop down into Lake Ashley and then the game range. Okay, going into Juliet and Echo. Again, there's not a ton of updates there from the last meeting. That's outward planning. It's kind of that north and east side of the fire. Have the same divisions out there doing a lot of the same work, but just briefly, we got different lines that we're putting in with the heavy equipment task forces, like the Priscilla Sundance Ridge. We've masticated the West Fork of Thompson River out to the Spruce Burn Scar. Reopened up and prepped the dozer line that we used during 2014 on the Spruce fire. Takes you up to this ridge line. And then structure prep around Snyder and the other values of risk in the bottom. So really just getting prepped there for if and when the fire continues to move to the northeast. Then just additional comment, with the structure protection group, we have bolstered that a little bit. It took us a while, but we got another structure protection specialist in to bolster that group. Got a few engines with them, and they're tying in with our cooperators meetings every other day, looking at if and when we have to work with the volunteer departments. They're actually doing a little site visit with Phillips 66 because there's some obvious concerns there if we get ember wash off the game range. So just doing a lot of that outward planning. And really with that, just operationally, this weather that they talked about with fire behavior, Plains got 0.16, we got 0.32 here, the fire got somewhere in between. Really that just buys us time to kind of get what we have secure, reset, and then continue to move forward proactively. So with that, that's it for the ops update.
I'd like to take just a moment to recognize our Red Cross representative. He's here to answer your questions, share what services they can provide to you, and is available to you. We solicited for questions on Facebook today. All of those questions involved what the rain did, the effect the rain had on the fire, and what we could see as a result of that. Our Deputy IC, Mark Goller, is going to come up with closing comments, and he's going to address those questions.
Thank you, Jeanette. Mark Goller, Deputy IC. Yesterday was August 1st, and I heard over the years, I've heard a lot of people say, well, August 1st is the start of fire season in the Northern Rockies, right? I even heard it since I've been up here. Well, this is an exceptional year. Our team started over near Townsend, southeast of Helena, in June. As Brian Anderson mentioned, it's an anomalous year. It's unusual fuel conditions, unusual temperatures. You heard the weather Bob talking about the heat, what we've seen to this point. So I guess that was like the preseason, right? Before yesterday, preseason. But the fact of the matter is I started looking at historically here in the Northern Rockies, and especially in this region, in this area, what can we expect? What is that season-ending event that Brian talked about? When will that be? And the data for the last 20 or so years, the average is 45 days from the 1st of August. 45 days. I've been up here on fires all the way into October, the middle of October. That doesn't bode well, does it? I mean, you start thinking about that we could be living with fire for quite some time. So that brings us to this fire, the fire that we're living with, the fire that you guys are living with. And the questions that Jeanette mentioned mostly centered around what did the rain do for us? Are we going to change our tactics? Are we going to change what we're doing? Is it going to put the fire out? The answer to the first question, the last question, is it going to put the fire out? No. No, it's had some temporary effect. Are we going to change our tactics? No. What has it done for us? That's the biggest question. What has the rain done for us? Because, you know, a lot of people in their mind, you know, think, you know, we got the rain. This doesn't matter where we are in the country. We get a little rain on the fire. We get 3/10 of an inch. It's out, right? We're done. But the fact of the matter, it isn't. It had mixed blessings for us, really, and mixed blessings and somewhat of a detriment to what we're doing. First thing is that it allowed us to be really aggressive at mop up. As Scott mentioned, in Division Charlie, Division Zulu, you know, we have fired down to the lines. That rain allowed the resources to really get out there today and really start hammering home, putting smokes out, putting any threats to the line, making sure those lines are secure for the future. Because again, you think about that 45 days from today and the fact that the fuels will continue to burn and smolder. We've got to really be diligent in the fact that we mop those lines up and secure them along this front, all the way from Graves Creek down to the Copper King fire scar. That's what we're doing. That's the strategy. The tactics that we're employing, you know, you've seen, we've done some aerial ignition, we've done some hand ignition, we've done a lot of different, we've got lines out there, control lines, they're plumbed, there's hose lays. So the rain was a blessing in one way, in that it allowed us to really get after that diligent, hard mop up from Weber's Gulch trailhead, you know, just west of that, just north of it, I'm sorry, all the way up to Graves Creek. The detriment that it was that it may slow us down from continuing to secure that line from the Weber Gulch trailhead down to Copper King. So, and the way that we're doing that is that slow, methodical application of fire. Now, I'm gonna branch out just a little bit. You know, the national situation, we're in preparedness level 5. This is the highest level of fire activity, resource needs, team deployments that we see. Preparedness level 5. So there's a lot of fire out there across the country that are taking resources. They're taking aircraft, they're taking crews, they're taking engines. We're competing for all that. We're at a pretty low priority to get that stuff. In one way, you think, golly, we really need it. You know, we need it to achieve our objectives. We make the case every day. But the fact that we're a lower priority speaks to the professionalism and what these guys are doing to maintain the fire where it is and not have it running and gunning. So we're really looking at continuing the work that we've been doing over the past several days, continuing that march to Copper King to secure that area, to keep the fire that's up there still living, breathing, still burning downhill from getting to the bottom and making that big run. That's what we're after. And so, you know, to that end, when I start talking about living with fire, our team has fought fire all over the country. We've done a lot of assignments in other states. You know, we spent a lot of time together. These guys are dedicated professionals. The team members this team that I'm on with these people are great. They are awesome firefighters. They're professionals. They take things very seriously. They take it to heart. They internalize it because they're living with it as well when we go somewhere. The difference here, a lot of our team members live here. They're from here. They grew up here. This is a lot different scenario than we're used to. We've had fire in this area before. I've camped in the same field. I think it was in 2008, the Chippy fire. I can't remember the year, but you know, I've slept in that field for weeks previously. But when we started this in early July, you know, these folks most of our team members are from Plains, grew up in Thompson Falls, you know, this whole area. So they're living with it as well. They're taking days off. The days off are surrounded by the fact they can still hear the helicopters flying. They still know that the fire's out there. They still live and breathe the smoke. So a lot of vested interest in making sure that this is successful. And so, will we change what we're doing? No. Are we still going to do it slowly, methodically, ensuring the safety of not only the firefighters and the public, but also those values at risk, the homes that you live in? We want to make sure that as we go through, and not only that, but the natural resources, that's why we're doing low intensity burns. That's why we're taking our time. It would be really easy just to go to those lines that have been constructed and just light that off and just see what happens. That's not what we're about. We're about being very careful because we take great pride in doing things right. And so, we're still looking at several days to accomplish the objectives of getting to that Copper King fire scar. We looked at, maybe 8 days, maybe 9 days. The rain may have slowed us up just a little bit, but we'll continue to move that way. Once we can get that sealed off, we may be able to transition down again to another complexity team. The fire will be back up in the high country. We'll have it sealed off and it will move back toward those containment lines or the contingency lines and so on that Scott talked about, that's going up here on Sundance Ridge to the Spruce Tooth fire scar and on beyond. That will reduce the threat to Thompson Falls, to Plains, and this whole front. So we're going to continue those actions. We're going to continue that slow pace. And we're going to continue to be careful and protect you guys, our firefighters, and the natural resources that we all love. It's a beautiful country, and we want to keep it that way. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there. I'm going to turn it back to Jeanette, and then we're going to, I'll let her describe what's going to happen next. Thank you.
So hopefully some of your questions were answered this evening, and if they were not, we have found it very effective to be able to speak with you one-on-one. The presenters will be available for questions, as several information officers are also available. You met some of those as you came in, and I think we still have some of the packets that some of you are holding with our daily update and a map and maybe some smoke information. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and break out so we can meet with you individually. We'll have those who are interested in questions with our incident command and forest management over here by this sign, which is our incident objectives. For operations, we will be right here at this main map underneath the shelter. And then for evacuations and structure information, we'll be over here at this map. So with that, thank you so much for being here and allowing us to share information on the Thorn Creek fire.